Good evening. We want to welcome you all to the Beis Gimmel Hageula for bringing and commemorating also the Yortzeit of my husband, Rabbi Menachem ben Rab Shraga Alav Shalom. Before we go on, I want to say the Rebbe's kapitel. So if you have it nearby, please take it. If not, just follow along. Shir lamalos esei einai el haharim me'ayin yavo ezri. Ezri me'em Adonai osei shamayim va'aretz. Al yitin lamot raglecha, al yanom shomecha. Hine lo yanum v'lo yishan shomer Yisrael. Adonai shomecha, Adonai tzilcha ayad yaminecha. Yomem Hashem ashloya kakev v'yareach balayla. Adonai yishmorcha mikol ra, yishmor nafshecha. Adonai yishmor tzeiska avolecha mi'ata v'ad olam. Yechi Adonenu Marenu Rabbeinu Melech HaMashiach V'olam Ved. As we know, Hageula is not only a Geula for the Frierdiker Rebbe coming out of prison, but a Geula for every Yid, Geula for all of us, Geula Prati for every single Yid. As I was looking through the Sefer Hageula, I saw a letter that the Frierdiker Rebbe had written, and as he writes there, it was not myself alone that Kadosh Baruch Hu redeemed on Yud Beis Tammuz, but all those who love the Torah and observe its command. And so to all those who merely bear the name Jew, for the heart of every man of Israel, irrespective of his particular level in the observance of mitzvahs, is perfectly bound with Hashem and his Torah. So we all have our Geula Prati and have the Geula Klali, with the scholars of unser Rebbe Melech HaMashiach, take it mamash now. As mentioned earlier, it is also the Yortzeit of my husband on Yud Beis Tammuz, who I feel very much exemplified what it is to live in Yeni Mashiach Hageula, of Shav Deeper and Maaseh, his different pu'ulas that he was involved in. One of the pu'ulas that he felt very, very much was the tool to bring Mashiach was that of Simcha B'tar Rasa, Simcha to bring the Geula. And he established Mata Shir V'Zimra, which is going strong today, and rejoicing and besimcha for the Geula. The three speakers we have tonight, not only know our family and my husband, but I feel very strong role models in living in Yeni Mashiach Hageula. Our first speaker wrote the book on Chassid Approach to Joy, which very much explains and delves into it. My husband is into the Indian of Simcha Ta'arasa Lavias HaMashiach. So without further ado, we will start with Reverend Majeski. Thank you very much, Reverend Majeski.
Thank you. Do you hear me?
We do.
Yeah, okay.
If someone could focus on how are you able to do that?
Can't see? Is it okay or still not?
Yes, we see you.
Okay. So in addition to what Mrs. Rabb just said, that the Geula of the Frierdiker Rebbe was not only a Geula for him personally, but it was a Geula for every Yid, Kol Asher B'Shem Yisrael Yechuna. In addition to that, and beyond that, the Rebbe made it clear in a number of sichos that the Geula of the Frierdiker Rebbe of Yud Beis Tammuz was in a certain way actually the beginning of the process of Geula Mitzvah Shlema of all of Klal Yisrael from the entire Golus. We know that during the year of Tavshin and Aleph, Tavshin and Beis, was a whole different kind of sichos that the Rebbe gave us and described to us that the time that we're living in now. But specifically Shabbos Parshas Balak was a unique Shabbos. I'm talking about Tavshin Nun Aleph, where the Rebbe announced, in a certain sense, a new stage in the process of Geula unfolding. What do I mean by a new stage? Just like by Yetzias Mitzrayim, we see that the process of Geula of Yetzias Mitzrayim unfolded in many stages. First, there was the point where Hashem appeared to Moshe by the sneh, told him personally that he's appointing him to be the one to take Yidden out of Golus. Then Moshe Rabbeinu came to the Yidden. He performed 3 different miracles and told them that Hashem sent him that he should take them out of Golus. So now it became known to the Yidden that Moshe Rabbeinu is the one who's going to redeem them. Pare didn't know yet. Then the next step is when Moshe Rabbeinu went to Pare and told Pare that the time has come that he has to let the Yidden out of Mitzrayim. But the Mitzrayim didn't know yet. Then came the next stage, which was the Makkos. And at this point, all the Mitzrayim were aware that there's a Moshe Rabbeinu and the Eibush sent him to take Yidden out of Mitzrayim, and that's why they're Makkos. The Shabbos before Yetzias Mitzrayim, which we now call Shabbos HaGadol, was the time that there was the war between the Bcherim of Mitzrayim and the Egyptians, which is the way the Alter Rebbe explains it, and the way the Rebbe explains this part of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. This was the first major breach in the Klip of Mitzrayim, opening the door for the immediate Geula. And then came Makkos Becheres, which was the final blow for the Klip of Mitzrayim. And then the night of Pesach, when the Eibishter, that night of Makkos Becheres was when it was the final blow, and the next day was the actual day that he went out of Mitzrayim. It still wasn't over. Then there was Kriyas Yamsuf. Until Kriyas Yamsuf, they were still being chased by the Egyptians. And then came Matan Torah. And then the Eibishter told them to build a Mishkan. And the real final step, which is the ultimate, and with this was the completion and the culmination of Yetzias Mitzrayim, is when they finally went into Eretz Yisrael. So too, when the Rebbe told us that we're living in this unusual time, the time of Geula, we see how it unfolded in stages. In general, there's so many details to this, but generally speaking, Tavshin Mem Aleph, that was the year that the Rebbe introduced and announced that all that Eibush is waiting for now is for us saying and asking Ad Mosai. Tavshin Mem Beis, the Rebbe announced that this year is the Hei Shnas Bias Mashiach. And after that, every year, Gili Mashiach, Divrei Mashiach. There's no doubt by the Rebbe saying this, it was clear that we entered a new era. And then in Tavshin Nun, with the Persian Gulf crisis, the Rebbe announced, Higia Azman Gulaschem. Was another stage. Tavshin Nun Aleph, the Rebbe said, we now have seen the fulfillment of the Yalkut Shemini. This year is the year that we've already witnessed that Melech HaMashiach revealed in this year. A few weeks later in Parshas Shoftim, the Rebbe then said that now we already have Nevuah becoming revealed to us. And Chayisara Tavshin Beis, the Rebbe said that the Avodah of Shlichus has now been completed. And the only Shlichus that's left is to be Makabel Pnei Mashiach. In Parshas Vayishlach that year, the Rebbe said that we already finished the Avodah of Birur Netzutzos, the Avodah Sabirunim. In Parshas Mishpatim that year, the Rebbe said that we are already witnessing the fulfillment and the beginning of the fulfillment of the prophecy, Kitzur Chabesim Liitim, that swords will be turned into plowshares. And by Yakel, Tavshin Beis, the Rebbe said we're already witnessing the fulfillment of what Mashiach is supposed to do, is the beginning of the process of Kibbutz Golius. Each one of these things was another stage of the process of Gula unfolding. And this in itself, there's 2 ways to explain. One way is to say that Rebbe is letting us know what's going on. And the other way is, when the Rebbe said these things by the Fabrengen, that was actually what was made it happen. That's when it happened. And by the Rebbe saying it, that is what opened up that new door. As it says in Chassidus, that by tzaddikim of this caliber, when they say something new in Torah, They're not just saying a new explanation. Beyond that, they're opening a new door where something new is being revealed in the world. And that's why in the Zohar, it always uses the term Pasach. Pasach Reb Chia v'Omar, Pasach Reb Abba v'Omar, was we have in the Siddur Pasach Eliyahu, which means that when he said these things, a new door opened up and something new changed in the world. And this is the way it is, by the way we understand by the Rebbe's Sichos, that when the Rebbe spoke that this is happening or that's happening, speaking itself is actually what was making it happen. The Rebbe was revealing this level and this stage of Geula to unfold right then and there in front of our eyes. Like we find in reference to Lag B'Omer, the famous story, and how the Rebbe explains it, that there was no rain. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai said words of Torah on the pasuk, "Hine matevim anoim sheves zachem gam yochad," and after he finished saying, rain came. In other words, by saying those words of Torah, he opened up something new, l'mayla, and then that manifested down here in rain. The story, which I think is well known, that personally I was involved in the Zeicha to have this miracle. This was in Tavshin Chavtes, when a group of us were in a car accident. The car was on fire, and miraculously everybody was saved. We know that the Rebbe himself said that a few hours before the accident, he requested that letters from the Alter Rebbe, the Mittel Rebbe, and the Tzemach Tzedek, giving brachas for those that had fires, using the words of Maimer Kadesh Elyon, Nochas Reifa Vert Maraich, which means that after Midas Hadin comes Midas Harachamim. The Rebbe said that the reason why he had that done was for this incident. In other words, by the Rebbe publishing brachas on fires, this brought down the bracha and that protected all those that were involved in this fire. So this is what happened on Shabbos Parshas Bodar, Toshanun Aleph. This was one of those new stages when the Rebbe announced something new, which was never said before. And what is it? The Rebbe said, as we're approaching the 3 weeks, we'll be learning Hilchos Beis HaBchira in order to bring the building of the Beis HaMikdash. But now, at the place where we're at, it should be done in a way different than it was done in previous years. In what way is it different? So the Rebbe said that in previous years before, it was done more coming from the feeling of Avelus. In other words, we were so pained by the loss of the Beis HaMikdash that pain that was driving us to do everything we can to rebuild it. And one of the ways is through learning Hilchos Beis HaBchira. But it was the pain of destruction of the Beis HaMikdash that was the driving force behind it. We can all identify with the famous Sikha that probably every single Lubavitcher Chassid has heard. The recording has been publicized so much, where the Rebbe was screaming from the depth of his heart that every day that the Beis Mikdash is not rebuilt, it's as if it was destroyed, which means that, in a certain extent, every day we can look at that day and say it was actually destroyed today. And the Rebbe concluded, imagine that the Beis Hamikdash would be on fire and a person would watch it, even a person with a heart of stone. He would do everything he can to not let it happen. And that's what the Rebbe was screaming, Keret Welt Heit. But if you listen to the Sikha, what is driving the person to do everything he can when he realizes that this is the burning of the Beis Hamikdash? And that is so painful that you do everything that you can to stop it from happening. But now the Rebbe said it's being done in a different way. And that is that we're so close to the union of Geula. And Geula is something which is so palpable that the feeling of Geula is dominating and it cancels out the feeling of pain. It's not about running away from the pain and trying to correct the damage. It's about being excited that the third Beis Hamikdash is being built. The third Beis Hamikdash, which is greater than even the Mishkan and the first and the second and so on. I mean, just to give an example, imagine a person that grew up in Russia and he grew up traumatized by the fact that every single day and every hour of the day they lived with fear that they might be caught when they do a mitzvah or they're learning Torah. And every moment of the day there was fear, what's happening with them, what's happening with their children, what's happening with their parents. And finally, after many years, they left and went out to a free country. So you can imagine that when they were going to the free country or when they were in the free country, every moment was, Baruch Hashem, we no longer have that fear. That was the feeling. But that was in the beginning. As they got further away from that time, then they began to enjoy the freedom in its own right because it's freedom. It wasn't constantly comparing it and being charged up by the feeling of fear and pain that he went through before. So as we're getting further away from Churban Beis Hamikdash and closer to Geula Mitzvah Shlema, now we're able to feel in such a way the Geula that it's so close to us that this is the feeling, the excitement of Geula is the feeling that's the dominating feeling. And that's what's driving us to learn in Yonah Mashiach Hageula, to learn about Hilchos Beis HaBchira, and not the pain of the Churban, because that's something which we're so far away from. And we can imagine, if they look at the Rebbe, and look how the Rebbe is simcha, and the Rebbe makes everybody else be simcha. And we can imagine how much pain the Rebbe feels. The Rebbe feels the pain of every single Yid, certainly of every single chassid even more, because the brain, when the Rebbe is the head of Klal Yisrael, and the brain feels everything that's going on with every single person. In addition to the hundreds of stories, just want to mention something which I heard recently, a story that was told by Rabbi Grossman from Migdal Emek. He's known that he works with prisoners, been doing that for many years, and he turned around the lives of thousands of prisoners and set them up in the right path. At one time he was in America and got a phone call from Rabbi Binyamin Klein that the Rebbe asked him to go visit a certain prison and visit a certain individual, gave him the name. He canceled all his appointments. He imagined this must be somebody very important, and he went to visit him. But when he got there, he realized this is a person who was not even from, not only not from, he knew nothing about Yiddishkeit. And who was he? He was a doctor. And he shared with him that he was arrested because he made some mistake. And they gave him, unfortunately, many, many years in jail. And he was beside himself. He couldn't take it. He couldn't live with it. And he was having negative thoughts of doing something. And he told him that he said, God, if you don't want me to do this, then let me know. And a day or two later, Rabbi Grossman came to visit him. So he asked him, do you have any connection to the Lubavitcher Rebbe? He didn't know who the Rebbe was, never heard the name, no connection whatsoever. But he's a Yid, and the brain feels everything, the pain in every part of the body, even the toenail. And the Rebbe felt what was going on in his mind, what was going on in his heart, and the Rebbe sent someone to save him, and of course he did. If the Rebbe feeling the pain of every single Yid, which makes it almost impossible to think, how is it even possible to contain so much pain, which is beyond our understanding. Nevertheless, the Rebbe, we saw so much simcha. The Rebbe made everybody else be simcha. And the Rebbe explained why, because the union of Geula and Mashiach is so open, so clear, it's so strong now, that this is the reason that gives us this tremendous simcha. And this is the reason why we are motivated to do everything we can to make Mashiach coming sooner, because we see how soon it is and how close it is and how real it is. And on top of that, we know that it says in Chassidus, and this is one of the things that Rebbe spoke about more recently. In fact, the last mimer that the Rebbe said was actually a mimer, Necha Hashem Elakecha, Erev Shavuos, Tovshem Memtes. This was even after the Rebbe stopped saying Maimarim. This was the last mimer the Rebbe said again. And in that mimer, the Rebbe spoke about the fact that words of Torah are forever. And they're renewed, which means when a Yid sits and learns something in Torah, many generations later, then the Eibishter is saying those words at that same time. And we know the relationship between a Chassid and a Rebbe is like a Yid and the Eibishter. So by a Rebbe, it's also the same thing. That when we read the Sikha, that the Rebbe said 31 years ago, it's not just 31 years ago. It's happening again, except on a higher level. That we are now so close to Mashiach, and so close to Geula, and so close to the third Beis Hamikdash, that we should be motivated with every fiber of our being to make it happen, because we see how close we are. And that's something which we can feel now, and that's something which the Rebbe is telling us now, not just 31 years ago. In fact, I would say, we mentioned before that this Farbrengen tonight is also in connection to the yahrzeit of Rabbi Rapp, which one of the things that he had passion for was the Aveda of Simcha B'Tarosa, based on the Rebbe's Sikha. And that's basically what the Rebbe's Sikha was all about. That this kind of Aveda we couldn't have had before, because the Golus is so painful. And it wouldn't be possible for a person to be able to feel that pure Simcha B'Tarasa, even if we know that Mashiach is coming. But now that it's so close, and especially after all the things that Rebbe told us, and we watch and we observe how the Geula is unfolding in front of our eyes, then this is the way that we have to, and therefore it's possible to have that feeling of Simcha. And this is the Avodah we need to do to be able to be excited about the third Beis Hamikdash, excited about the coming of Mashiach, and that Simcha is instrumental in bringing Mashiach B'Pel Mamish. So the Eibishter helping that even though it's 31 years from that Sikha, we know that it's not Chas v'Shalom that during these 31 years nothing has changed. It's changing constantly. And as close as we are then, we're 31 levels closer than we were. Nevertheless, we want it to be something which we can touch with our hands and which we see it here in the physical level, but there's no doubt that Baruchnias, things are unfolding and unfolding constantly. So the Eibishter helping that this year we should see it be'enei basar. We should see it now in this month of Tammuz, which the Rebbe refers to as the Chodesh Hageula, and not pay attention, unfortunately, as many people get stuck and distracted by looking in the wrong place, looking and focusing on the negative things which are happening. It's negative, it's suffering, there's no question about it. But our avodah is to focus on the positive and to focus on the good and to focus on the fact that Mashiach's coming is imminent. And in that way, we can follow the Rebbe's Heirah, be excited about Mashiach Hageula, and especially through learning. How can we accomplish this? Through learning the Rebbe's Sikhs on the subject of Mashiach Hageula in the years of the Nalef and Beis. And by everyone doing this Avodah, we'll be zeichet to see the third Beis Hamikdash with our eyes of flesh. We'll see the Rebbe himself, Melech HaMashiach, with our eyes of flesh, leading out of Golus, and the whole world will see that how Chodesh Tammuz is in fact the Chodesh Hageula, the Gula Mitzvah Shlema of Gans Klal Yisrael.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Majeski. It says, thank you for your words, constant words of inspiration and clarity to really show us the direction of where we're going. And especially now, seeing the importance of our words, of learning in Hageula and demanding the Geula miyad. And as you said, not through pain, but through simcha, excitement, and knowing that this is imminent. This is something that's happening now. Thank you so much for that emphasis. And just keep, like you say, keep on that trail, keep on that track, positive. Our next speaker is someone who's a longtime family friend and has been a long time buddy of my husband. If I couldn't find my husband, I'd call, where's Rabbi Gerlitsky? So Bashkacha Pratis, Friday night, we were sitting here with my children and they were looking at old pictures of Tati, whatever, they found some old pictures. And of course, in the pictures, who is it? Rabbi Gerlitsky and Tati. So the buddies. So we're really looking forward to hear the stories and all the different things that you went through with my husband. Thank you so much.
A guten Yom Tov, the Rebbe says that Yud bis Tammuz, you have to wish a guten Yom Tov, so ein Tag beim ist der größte Yom Tov. Mismach Geula Legula, the Geula from the Beis, Gimmel Tammuz should bring us to the ultimate Geula Mashiach now. Before I even start, just Yud bis Tammuz by us is a big Yom Tov. It was the first time that my father was by a Fabrengen from the Friedrich Rebbe Tov Reish Tzadik Aleph. He learned in the Lubavitcher Yeshiva in Lodz, and when the Friedrich Rebbe came to make a Fabrengen in 1931 in Varsha, so they took a bus of Talmidim from Lodz, and that was the first time that he saw the Friedrich Rebbe. And he even remembered when he was a little boy, 12 years old, they were saying Tillim in the Chadorim in Poland because they heard that Rebbe was arrested. And he remembers when the Friedrich Rebbe was released from prison. So it was a big Yom Tif. And also it's the Yom Tif by him that it was the first time that he was by Fabrengen from the Friedrich Rebbe, Yud bis Tammuz. This time was on Shabbos, the minor was on Friday, it was a whole big weekend. Speaking about Yud Beis Tammuz is the Yom Tov that the Friedrich Rebbe showed us not to be misfold for anything. The Friedrich Rebbe went Sidus Nefesh, one Yid against mighty power country of Russia, and he was victorious. Bashgocha Protis, Rabbi Rapp's Yortzeit is on Yud Beis Tammuz. So he is a chassid that shows what Yud Beis Tammuz is, not to become nispol, not to be afraid or not to be, nothing should distract the chassid from doing the right thing when he's doing the right thing. So Rabbi Rav was an emissary Mekusha to the Rebbe. When you say Mekusha, he was tied to the Rebbe, so it wasn't the one thing. If a person is Mekusha, his essence is Mekusha and everything. And that you saw in everything that the Rebbe asked, and he was always in the forefront. If it was Shleimus Haaretz, so he was always there with calling the big people from Israel and Crown Heights and inviting them and speaking all about Shleimus Haaretz. If it was Mifzoim, I was still from the original tankisten that went when the tank started. He arranged that just like Bochum, they go on Merkeshlichus for 3 weeks, get a $5 bill from the Rebbe. So he arranged that you could go for 3 weeks to the airport. We had to count 40 hours a week, and you get the $5, and I did. If it was the Rebbe, he kocht on learning Rambam, the Siyumi Rambam, he was always the first one, the chassid, the kochsach. If it was the Rebbe said to make Shira Zimra, he right away took it upon himself, and that included already every month the Kiddush Levon and the Chodarom from Tesvavel, etc. Veretnach, when the Rebbe spoke about Mashiach Hageula, so there was the Mata Mashiach organization that started to do everything to bring Mashiach, and he was right there by every meeting, always ready for what has to be done. Give another dogma. There were Chosheva people that came to New York, and his shliach either was in Israel or he was in some other far country. And as it always went, if it was someone real Choshev, someone went with him and introduced him to the Rebbe. So not everybody was ready or up to it or had the time for it. But the rabbi, I could tell you, whenever a request came in, if it was through me, I went over, said, give me the details, where should I meet him? And he went through and he brought many, many people to the Rebbe. Therefore, when we look by dollars, you see a lot of times he's there. There were many people that he personally knew, and there were also people that he did a favor to many shluchim all over the world to bring their kvirim, their connections to the Rebbe. He was poshet dug mechayev chassidische yid. To give an example, I come from Montreal, a little city. So a guest comes into shul, shalom aleichem, Zayid, where are you from? Maybe you could be invited, maybe I can help you. In a city like New York, you come into the 70, there are hundreds of people, no one looks around too much. Rabbi Rapp, the Kusil Menachem, when he was in 70, there wasn't such a thing. If a Yid came in, he got a warm Shalom Aleichem. Who are you? Introduced himself, and he asked him where he's from. And if there's anything he could help him. You don't see such a thing today. But I can tell you that Rabbi Rapp was from the Fatzaite Eden, just like in the Shtetl Amol. A Yid came in, he got a warm Shalom Aleichem, he felt welcomed. That's what Rabbi Yikusil Menachem did all the years. B'chalal, he was poshet a chosid that you don't see today. A Yid was ogehit in Machshove, in Dibur, in Maise, caring for every bocher in yeshiva. A bocher would come over, he would ask him something. I remember taking him back with after the Siyumim, could be 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, and we would discuss different things on the way. If a bocher came over in the middle, he needs a shus for this, a shus for that. He was always so caring, mamish, like a father to a son. Then also, what's amazing, when he used to come to the Siyumei Rambam, he used to speak. So it wasn't just that he spoke and he connected the Rambam to the time, which this was his specialty. But Yizen Ayid, they saw a Yid that poshet Gemores, Medroshim, Chassidus, Maimorim, Sichas, on Ashir. Like I always said, when did he have so much time to learn? It's only like the Rebbe brings down that someone that does Tzorchit Tzibor, Teirosim Mizbareches, he gets a bracha that when he learns a little bit, Hashem benches him that he should have 1,000 times more. By him, Poshet, he saw Teirosim Mizbareches. He had a Meidike memory, remembered everything. If he learned something, he remembered it, and it was amazing. Poshet, his lumdus, his yidiyah, and the whole pshat remes drush sod, to the whole kol hateidah kula. What should I say? Steht in Gemara as he would also, when he would speak by the Siyum and Rambam, he had pushed the chush to connect the Siyum with the time that we're in. Either it was a Yutis Kislev or Beis Tammuz or any Lubavitcher Yom Tif or Chanukah Purim, how the Rambam's 3 prokim are connected to that day. This was amazing. Speaking about the Rambam, I said already the story, but just to run through it again. It's a long story, but the bottom line is that the year that Rebbe started the takon of learning Rambam was Chof Zayin Nisan Tovshin Daled Mem. And it was 2 months later that I had an answer for Tferes Kenim Levi Yitzchok, evening we made for the Moisid, and the Rebbe answered 4 letters, Pei, Beis, Pei, Mem, abbreviation and a question mark, which is Habekoil Mamish. The Rebbe wanted to know a report how the evening went. So the evening Chov Sivan was on the Tuesday. I got the answer Thursday morning before the Rebbe went to the oil. And by the time the Rebbe came back from the oil on Chov Ches Sivan, which that year no one knew yet what Chov Ches Sivan was, it was revealed at the end of the year when the letters of the Frierdiker Rebbe was printed. Tafshin Aleph, and the Frierdiker Rebbe writes that today my daughter and son-in-law arrived safely to America. So the Rebbe went to the oil. We didn't know why. By the time the Rebbe came back from the oil, we had already a duch. And Sunday, I got a second answer on the duch. And the Rebbe wrote, Miskabel Chuas Chaim, was received, and a warm thanks. And the Rebbe added, Pei Nun Nun. I saw the handwriting. The Nun Nun was like steps. Askel Alatzien. So right away, it was a big thing, and we publicized whoever came, and everyone had the same question. What does Pei Nun Nun come into report on the evening that Tferes Kenim had? Pei Nun Nun, Pidi Nefesh Miskabel is usually when someone writes a Pidi Nefesh before Rosh Hashanah, that ever said I received it. But why Pei Nun Nun? That was on Sunday. Tuesday, we had a Shir Rambam. And since I had a car, so after the Shir, I would give people a lift home. So one of the people in the car was Rabbi Rapp, and there was a full car, 5 people, and we drove on Carroll Street between Troy and Schenectady. And since we were 5 people and they were in front of a Jewish house, 2 young Shkotzim, so it was obvious that they're either coming out of the house or they're in the middle of robbery or right after. So we stopped to see what's taken care, what's happening. And they started running. One ran the opposite way of the traffic, one ran with the traffic. So I was the driver. I chased with the car, the one that was running with the traffic. I stopped the car right next to him, and he also stopped. And he took out a gun, and within a second, you heard this big boom. And what was I? Probably like 5 feet away from this guy. And I saw a big ball of fire. Baruch Hashem, no one jumped out of the car, even though the doors were open. And I just gave gas. We ran away. And in the morning, the police came. They have to check out the car. They call me out, and they show me the driver sits here right by between the mirror and the driver, and the top of the drawer, a bullet hole. I remember I wrote the whole story right away to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe answered then, "Hahoye bo sifri kodesh." Utzdoke Pushke was there in the car, Holy Svarim and Pushke, Asker Alatzir. And when I wrote the letter, I wrote to the Rebbe, thank you for the fact that the Rebbe wrote Hanan, because we know the Gemara says whoever sees Hunna in his dream, because Hunna has a nun, has a miracle. If he sees Hamnunna or Chanina, someone that has two nuns, a double miracle. Here, the Rebbe wrote Sunday, 2 days before, Panan, two nuns. So this was mamash, a double miracle. Noisef Lozeh was the first time we learned in Rambam. So today already, after learning 40 times, so you know already what's coming up. That was the first time. And it was the first time we learned in the Rambam that there's no such thing as mikro nikris. It happened by accident. Everything is bashgacha pratis. If someone is going to say mikro nikris, it just so happened by chance. Harezu derech achzoris, it's a cruel way of thinking. And that was when we finished this year, we drove and we had the story, and Baruch Hashem, that the Rebbe foresaw and had protected those that learn his Rambam, and Baruch Hashem, that nothing happened. For sure, as in the day of his yahrzeit, so all work that he did throughout the years, like the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, spoiled Yeshua, so for sure he'll be a good better for his wife, for his children, for his grandchildren. And just like here, he didn't stop for a minute being Marish Oilemis, that Mashiach has to come right away. I'm sure that he's standing upstairs now and doing whatever he could that Mashiach should come mamish now. And the Gemara says, Ma zari b'chayim, afu b'chayim. So here in this case, we see Baruch Hashem, Yossi took over the Beis Chabad, the famous Beis Chabad in the airport, which you see many times. There are different organizations that have stories, and they put on people, and they spend a lot of money, and you hear beautiful stories of the Rebbe. But there's also on the spot in the airport, people come over and they say they have a story with the Rebbe, how the Rebbe gave him children, how the Rebbe saved them, and beautiful stories that we see people like on the spot just put a telephone, they record it and send it out. And Tzemach, that he comes to the Siyumei Rambam and he gives over from the Tikvas Menachem, from the two famous Svarim that Rabbi Rab published on Siyumei Rambam last night. Also, he joined us and he shared with us the beautiful insights from his father's Svarim, and especially that we find ourselves now the Parsha of Polok, where the Rambam puts it, Parshas Bilam is all where the Torah speaks about Mashiach ben David, David himself, and Mashiach, and the famous Sichos of the Rebbe, all about the end of the Rambam Prokim Yud Aleph Yud Beis. And it's mamish this week, the week of Yud Beis Tammuz, the week of his yahrzeit. So what else could we say? That the Poel mamish in his chus, in the chus, is very viel gekocht, Jahren noch anand. In Brenge Mashiach, and his Avos Yisrael, and his Ibegebenkeit zum Rebbe, and his showing a good mechaya, what a chosed has to be like. And especially, like we said before, his yahrzeit is on the day of Mesiras Nefesh, on the day that the Frierdiker Rebbe showed is not to be in the spoil of anything. You're doing what Hashem wants in you, and that you saw by Rabbi Rab day and night. If it was to hang up a sign and say 70 Shleimus Haaretz, if it was to make a big tumul on Chodarom and Chamisha Oser Be'el, when the yeshiva was in Siaset, because one year the Rebbe said he came back from the oil, we thought that it's going to be a big Freiliche day. So all these little things, and the big things, he put it all together, and he did whatever he could to bring Mashiach, and now we have to finish it off, and let's hope that Mashiach is going to come this year on Yud Beis Tammuz, the beginning of the day, and we should celebrate the big Chag Hageula of Yud Beis Tammuz should be the big Geula from whole Klal Yisrael, and it's not going to be for Kitzel Veran Sheikh Neofer, all the Rabbein and Rabbi Yikosil Menachem, the Reb Shrage Besoichom Bagula Amitis Vashlema with this galus of the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach, take it from Yad Mamish now. Yechi Adeneinu Mereinu V'Rabbeinu Melech HaMashiach Le'Lam Vod, a guten Yom Tov, a freilichen Yom Tov, like with Mashiach now.
Thank you so much. So appreciate such a close friend. Such inspiring words. It's really very touching, and it really means a lot to us. Thank you so much, Rabbi Guritsky. Especially this story with the nun. Yes, everything's bashgacha pratis. Amazing story. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is the dynamic Rosh Yeshiva of Cincinnati. Cincinnati Yeshiva, dynamic. It's expanding and growing by bounds. But for us, he's a close friend, a warm, caring friend of our family. So thank you so much, Rabbi Avson. Thank you.
So first of all, l'chaim and a good Yom Tiv. I wish everybody a freilich and Chag Hageula, and it's truly a privilege, honor, and pleasure to be able to participate with each and every one of you tonight in the Farbrengen of Yud Beis Tammuz, which is also the yard site of Rabbi Rapp. And therefore, as we Farbreng together, we internalize the message of the Yom Tiv and we bring it forward in our Avodas Hashem. I just would like to start with sharing a perspective about Yud Beis Tammuz. That a couple years ago, it hit me. And since then, when it comes Yud Beis Tammuz, it reawakens this very special feeling in my heart in regards to the Yom Tov of Yud Beis Tammuz. In general, as Chassidim of the Rebbe, it's hard for us to connect so much with Yomim Tovim of the previous generations. We are so trained to have a koch in the Rebbe's in Yonim. So the Rebbe's days, Yud Aleph Kislev, Yud Aleph Nisan, Yud Shvat, the Rebbe's Yomim Tovim are with an Heitevis, with an extra chayis. When it comes to the previous generations, which many of us were not part of, so we have to tap into Zichroines and the earlier Farbrengens. But a couple of years ago, I realized something that changed my entire perspective on the Yom Tov of Yud Beis Tammuz. And I would like to share this feeling, this hergish that I have with you, because I think it can really enhance our appreciation and our celebration of the Mahus of this very, very special day. We know that when it comes to the Chag Hageula of the Alter Rebbe, there's 2 days, Yutes Kislev and Chof Kislev. And when it comes to the Friedrich Rebbe's Chag Hageula, we have Yud Beis Tammuz and Yud Gimmel Tammuz. Both of these sets of 2 days, we celebrate and we don't say Tachnun and we wear Big Day Shabbos. It's a wonderful days of celebration. Now, we all know that as much as we celebrate Chof Kislev, if someone that's not Lubavitch walks into shul and he's going to ask, so tell me, Hasidim, why did you not say Tachnun today? Why are you celebrating Chof Kislev? Why are you all wearing kapotes? It's not the easiest thing to explain to a regular person. Well, the Alter Rebbe left in his Nagid's house, which was worse than the 53 days in prison. It's a very difficult sell. You have to really be a keli to understand the Yom Tov of Chof Kislev. I remember that one year, Yutes Kislev was on a Thursday. So Friday morning, I showed up to the day school to drop off my kids for yeshiva, for school. So one of the malamdim, a very nice younger man, he sees me in my kapota. And he says, so Rabbi Avson, today is Chof Kislev. What's with the kapota? So I told him, Rabbi so-and-so, I can give you 3 answers. One answer I can tell you is, well, I just finished Farbrengen about a half hour ago, and we're coming straight from the Farbrengen right into dropping off the kids. So I didn't have a chance to change. Another thing I can tell you is that today is Friday. So if I'm wearing a kapot on Thursday and I could just continue it into Friday, Shabbos, Friday afternoon, I'm going to put it on again. I might as well not take it off. So, but those are the wrong answers. They're not true. I mean, partially true, but that's not the real reason. But for the third answer, I can explain it to you on one foot here in the hallway. It's not an easy sell, the Yom Tov of Chav Kislev. The same thing is true with Yud Beis Tammuz. Yud Gimmel Tammuz is the day that the Frierdiker Rebbe went out. He was freed. Yud Beis Tammuz, go explain to somebody that because he got the message from the Goy, the city was closed down because they were celebrating a celebration. Because he got the message from the Goy that there's going to be a Geula tomorrow, so for the next, this year is 95 years later, we are still not saying Tachnun on this day. And ad kedei kach, that in the history of Chabad Hasidim, most people don't say the Yom Tov Yud Gimel Tammuz. The big day is Yud Beis Tammuz. It also goes to Yud Gimel. Seemingly, Yud Gimel is the main Yom Tov. Yud Gimel, he went out of the jail, he went out of Kastrama. Yud Beis Tammuz is sort of a Yom Tov which has to be explained. Why are we even celebrating? Why are we not saying Tachnun tomorrow? Because the Frierdiker Rebbe was told by a Goy that there's a day that he's going to get out of prison. So of course, you know, it's a very special day, but there's a deeper oimek over here, a deeper idea, which I feel that I internalized, and I try every year to rethink about it and get myself focused on this one nekuda. And this is the nekuda I would like to start off and share with each and every one of you. And that is that we find ourselves, Yud Beis Tammuz, Tovshin Pei Beis, in a very, very unique era in the creation of this world and in the whole path and the entire process of bringing the Geula. And that is that Baruch Hashem, we, each and every one of us were Zoicha, that we live in an era where the Rebbe had told us the Besuras HaGeula. The Geula did not yet come, but we were told the Besuras HaGeula. Now, a lot of people are not sure, so what do we do with this? We're living in this era where we are told the Besuras HaGeula, but the Geula didn't come yet. So how do we live? How are we supposed to relate to the era that we are in? How are we supposed to feel about the tkufa that we are in? And how do we act in this tkufa that each and every one of us find ourselves? And that we learn from Yud Beis Tammuz. If you open up the Yud Beis Tammuz, Yom Shaboy Nisbaser. This is the day that the Frierdiker Rebbe was told he got the Besuras HaGeula. It's only in our generation that we start celebrating a day which the entire essence of the day is a Besuras HaGeula day. And yet we celebrate it, and we're wearing Big Day Shabbos even. We're not saying Tachnun, we're having Farbrengens. In other words, everyone understands that if it's a Besuras HaGeula day, even if the Geula did not yet come, we still have to live. We feel such simcha. It's part of the Geula process. Everyone says it's Yud Beis and Yud Gimel Tammuz. We are living in the tkufa of our Yud Beis Tammuz. We are living in an era where the Rebbe told us our Besuras HaGeula. And we have to live our lives today. The Rebbe is expecting us to live with a heightened joy, a heightened sensitivity, and a heightened anticipation towards the Yud Gimel Tammuz of our lives, which is the complete Geula, the revelation, the Iskalos. And this tkufa of Yud Beis Tammuz, the Yom Tov of Yud Beis Tammuz, I started feeling that this is really something that we, each and every one of us, can take into our lives, can live our lives as the continued Farbrengen, one big Farbrengen of Yud Beis Tammuz. Now that we understand the gewaldige simcha that we have, and we should all have, from the day of Yud Beis Tammuz, Yud Beis Tammuz also gives us a deep understanding of how we have to live in our tkufa after Gimmel Tammuz. I want to explain something which I hope that it will be understood, because it's a very, very important idea. And I would like to share this idea with you. If you had to pick the days that are part of the Yud Beis Tammuz Tkufa, you have the days go like this. Tes Vav Sivan is a bad day, the day the Frierdiker Rebbe was arrested. Gimmel Tammuz was the day that the Frierdiker Rebbe left the prison and he was sent to Kostroma. At the time, it was not known if that was even a good thing. Now, you may ask, how could it be worse than being in prison? Well, the Rebbe explains that while the Frierdiker Rebbe was in prison, he was suffering, but al pi teva, his life was safe, because the world was putting such pressure on Russia that they should not do anything to the Frierdiker Rebbe. All eyes were on the prison, that even though they tortured him and they bothered him, but they were afraid to kill him, kipshuta, in a physical way. However, once they said, okay, we're going to send him to Kostroma, far away from the prying eyes of the press and of the world, Russia, till today, till this very day, are very good at creating accidents. As we all know, I mean, hasn't stopped. Every once in a while, you find a political opponent of the Russian government all of a sudden dies, whether it's poisoning, who knows what. They have a lot of accidents. They're very, very good at creating accidents. What would have happened if there would have been an accident to the Frierdiker Rebbe when he was in Kostroma? On the way, while he was there, a drunken guy hit him on the street, his house burned down. The government would say, listen, it wasn't us, it was some drunken guy. And everyone would say, oh, well, and things would finish that way. So actually, the day of Gimmel Tammuz was a day that was good, that he left, and physically he was able to breathe better and to live better than in Shpalarka prison. But in a certain way, his safety was less guaranteed. And then came Yud Beis, Yud Gimmel Tammuz, that he was able to go out of prison. Now, the Yud Beis Tammuz story doesn't stop with the release of the Frierdiker Rebbe from prison. Al pi teva, what happens next? What's the epilogue of this story? Is that the Frierdiker Rebbe is no longer able to stay in Russia. The Russian government didn't want him. They kick him out, but they don't really kick out a Rebbe. The Rebbe voluntarily goes out, and he goes out to Latvia, and eventually Poland, and eventually America, and all the spreading of Hasidus and the entire Dorashvi enterprise, if you may use that word, the entire kibush, the conquering of the entire world, which took place and takes place in the Nesias of the Rebbe, and based on the 10 years of the Frierdiker Rebbe being in America, this mindset of conquering the world and literally bringing Getlichkeit to the entire world, that started with the release of the Frierdiker Rebbe from prison. By the Frierdiker Rebbe going out on Yud Beis Tammuz, that started the journey to America and the tkufa that we are in of the world getting ready, and Mamish holding on the front lines, and Mamish on the border of the Geula Mamish. As time goes on, and the success of the activities of the Frierdiker Rebbe starting to be seen clearer and more open in the world, so all of a sudden we start going backwards, and we start seeing how the entire process was special. For example, already in the early years of his Nesius, the Rebbe went on a campaign, and part of the campaign was to celebrate Gimmel Tammuz. And the Rebbe's reason was that at the time, the Chassidim weren't sure if it was good or if it was bad. But now that the Frierdiker Rebbe was released and nothing happened to the Frierdiker Rebbe, so in hindsight, we have to start celebrating Gimmel Tammuz. That was a campaign that the Rebbe pushed the Chassidim to celebrate, and the Rebbe himself celebrated and made farbrengens and wrote letters all about Gimmel Tammuz, showing us how the step, which until then was unknown if it was a good day or not, once we have Yud Beis Tammuz, it was revealed to us that Gimmel Tammuz is a special day. And now that is amazing in its own right. But many people are unaware of the following fact. This is not a hergish. This is a fact. And the fact is that as time continued to go on and the Rebbe's Nesius started getting more real, cemented, and successful, so to speak, even in the eyes of Ummah Olam, in the eyes of Olam Hazeh, the Rebbe's Nesius is just an unbelievable success. Not only did the Rebbe push to celebrate Gimmel Tammuz, the Rebbe started pushing to celebrate Tes Vav Sivan, the day that the Frierdiker Rebbe was arrested. No longer in the Rebbe's world was it a day of arrest. The Rebbe wanted Chassidim to celebrate it as the day of the beginning of the process of the Geul. They were talking about the day of the arrest of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Now, many people, I can't see your faces, and that's perfectly fine. You may say, Rabbi Avtzin, where do you see, what proof do you have? Where do you see that the Rebbe wants us to celebrate Tes Vav Sivan? Where do we find this to be a fact? You're creating this fact that the Rebbe is celebrating the day of the arrest of the Frierdiker Rebbe. And my answer to you is that it's not a personal heritage. If you open up the Sefer Maimorim of the Frierdiker of the Rebbe, the edited Maimorim of the Rebbe, we know that after the Rebbetzin passed away, the Stalkus of Rebbetzin Chaim Mushka, mainly from then on, the Rebbe stopped saying Maimorim. But while the Rebbe stopped saying Maimorim, the Rebbe started editing Maimorim. And these Maimorim would come out in honor of each Yom Tov, whether it was a biblical Yom Tov like Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, Simchas Torah, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, or even a Purim and Hanukkah, and then even the Chassidish Yomim Tovim, each Chassidish Yom Tov, while the Rebbe would not say a mimer, the Rebbe would give out and edit a mimer that the Chassidim should be able to learn on that day. In the later years, the Rebbe started editing a mimer in honor of the day of Tes Vav Sivan. In other words, this day, which historically, and our grandparents cried on that day, and it was a bitter, bitter day. It was the arrest of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Not only did the Rebbe, as the Nesius went on, and the success of the Frierdiker Rebbe's efforts was getting clearer and clearer, especially when the communism fell, which the Rebbe said was an extension of the success of Yud Beis Tammuz. Not only did the Rebbe want us to celebrate Gimmel Tammuz, the Rebbe wants us to celebrate even the arrest of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and that is Tes Vav Sivan. Which that means, and this is showing us something extremely, extremely important. And that is that certain things, with time goes on, certain things fade. By the Rebbe, the only thing that fades is the pain and the negative aspect of the day. Because when you start seeing the success of the continued success of the Frierdiker Rebbe in America, and making Pashat Dor Ashvi, the Dir B'Tachtoinim, and the success of the Rebbe the way it is, all of a sudden, when you start looking back, you don't just celebrate Yud Beis Tammuz. You don't just celebrate Gimmel Tammuz. You also celebrate Tes Vav Sivan, the day the Frierdiker Rebbe was arrested, because that was the first step to the Frierdiker Rebbe's leaving Russia, coming to America, and changing the world for Bias HaMoshiach. Now, each and every one of us in our lives have those 3 days. We have those good days in our life, which are the Yud Beis Tammuz days of our lives. It's Poshet Gishmak. We have Geula, we feel it, we're B'simcha. We have the Gimmel Tammuz days of our life where we're not really sure where we're going. Is it good? It feels good, but it may not be good. It's those days of uncertainty. And then you have the Tes Vav Sivan days, the days that seem to feel terrible. It feels like an arrest. It feels bad. Those are the 3 days. And the Rebbe, from the Yom Tov of Yud Beis Tammuz and the continued success of Yud Beis Tammuz, is showing us how we have to bring the light to not only to the days of Suffolk in our lives, the Gimmel Tammuz days, we also have to bring the light of the Geula and start celebrating even those days which were challenging and difficult, the arrest days. And this is the unique thing we find, the yard site of Rabbi Rapp, which people say, people wonder where the name come from. So because he's the rabbi that he pashut by his Chabad, hundreds of Yidden wrapped tefillin and tefillin. He's the rabbi that raps. So that's the real oimeka behind the name. But his yard site is on Yud Beis Tammuz, because Rabbi Rapp's whole inyan, and I didn't know him very well, but growing up in Crown Heights and as a bocher, and of course knowing his children, he pashut brought Geula to every aspect through the koyach of simcha and the emunah and bitochen in the Geula. He pashut in the darkest days. He was able to bring this tremendous gili or. He was able to be megala. He was able to reveal the simcha and the gutzkeit and the tayerkeit in the days that were difficult. He made sure that his whole inyan was to be kochsich and have a special involvement in the Besuras Hageula. And that's why his yard site is the day that we celebrate the Besuras Hageula. And we see clearly that Baruch Hashem, it's his pu'ulos continue to be matzliach and inspire, and don't get less. They only get more and more and more. Every year, the more and more people are being exposed to the Chabad houses, and they're spreading out to other airports. Many Batei Chabad now are opening. It's a whole new movement. And this whole success is from Rabbi Rapp's Emunah and Bitochen, that this is Simcha, Emunah and Bitochen, the Simcha and the Bitochen and the Besuras Hageula. Now the question is that while we are celebrating the Besuras Hageula, and that Simcha is allowing us to even celebrate these dark moments that we're in, because we feel like our Rebbe is in prison, is arrested. You know, we don't see the Rebbe. It's a tremendous, on one hand, days of tsar. But we know we have such bitochen that we're going to have our Yud Gimmel Tammuz. So already we have the Besuras Hageula. We're able to elevate and bring it all back and inspire ourselves to live a life of simcha and geula and bitochen in these dark days. But we know that it's not enough. It's not enough for us to celebrate and anticipate. We actually want to have a Yud Gimmel Tammuz in our life. Now, how do we do that? How do we get a Yud Gimmel Tammuz in our life? How do we go? How do we change? How do we get from the Yud Beis Tammuz to the Yud Gimmel Tammuz, from the Besuras Hageula to the Geula B'Poyel? So obviously we have to be moisef in Torah mitzvahs, And obviously we have to add in the learning of Moshiach. These are all extremely vital and very, very important in Yonim, and add in Simcha and these Kashrus, and these things are emes, viatzim, menachin, bekayim, pashut, true, true, true. But there's something more that we have to do. And the Rebbe wants us, each and every one of us, before Moshe Rabbeinu, when Moshe Rabbeinu was told that he has to take the Yidden out of Golos, Moshe Rabbeinu was very concerned. And his concern expressed itself in the words, V'heim lo ya'aminu bi. I'm afraid that the Yidden are not going to believe in me. And the question is, what do we care? Why was Moshe concerned if the Yidden believe in him or not? They believe yes, they believe no. You take them out of Golos. If someone is stuck in a pit and you have a machine to take him out, so then whether he believes you could do it or not is irrelevant. You just take him out. Why does the belief in Moshe Rabbeinu play any role? And why was Moshe afraid of the lack of belief? And the answer is because for Moshe Rabbeinu to take us out of Golos takes a special koyach. That koyach he receives by the emunah of the Yidden. If the Yidden believe that Moshe can take them out, that enables Moshe Rabbeinu to take us out. For Moshiach to come, we need to have, like it's brought down, we just had, and Rabbi Rab Kochsich in the Kiddush Levana, Ubikshu as Hashem came as David Malcolm. There has to be a request from the people and an acceptance of Moshiach by the people. And when the people show their willingness to accept Moshiach in their lives, that enables and empowers Moshiach to take us out. And that's why Rabbi Rab had a special koch in getting people involved in Kabbalah's Hamalchus, getting people involved to accept. Now, people are going to say, is that just if I sign, for example, there's a very important website where they have the Kabbalah's Hamalchus. It's called signformoshiach.com, where you can, there's the text of Kabbalah's Hamalchus. We accept the Rebbe. It just takes about a minute to read. It's worth reading. You accept, you sign your acceptance. Obviously, it's not just about signing your name. It's about a commitment benefesh. But this very act of getting yourself and other people to accept the Malchus of Mashiach, that enables and empowers Mashiach to take us from Yud Beis Tammuz to Yud Gimmel Tammuz. We are living in a unique time, and this time should not be taken for granted. I mean, there's a fascinating pasuk. The pasuk says, we know the story about the 4 lepers, the Mitzrayim. The Yidden were in siege by the Goyim, and they overnight, literally, the Goyim ran away, and the 4 Mitzrayim come to this camp of the Goyisha army, and it's empty, and it's full of food, and Pashit, it's a Gavaldik day, and the Navi says that one of the Mitzrayim told his friends, Yoim Psoirehi, it's a day of good news. How could we not share it with everyone else? We can't even wait till tomorrow. We have to share the Yoim Besoira. We have to share this special day, this Besura, to the entire world. So therefore, we're living in a time of Yoim Besoira. There's no question, and that should inspire us with Simcha, like Yud Beis Tammuz. But it's not enough. We have to get from Yud Beis Tammuz to our Yud Gimmel Tammuz. And for that to happen, we have to take the next step. We have to take the step of freedom and empower our Rebbe to take us out of Golos. And that's why these Kabbalah's HaMalchus, in a way that's Oifen HaMiskabel, the people accept that the Rebbe should not say, V'heim lo ya'aminu li, because he has the support that he needs to take us out. And that goes from Yud Beis Tammuz to Yud Gimmel Tammuz. That goes from the day of Bsuras Hageula to the Geula B'Poyel. And I am sure that when the Geula B'Poel happens, as we're going to Anane Shmaya, we're going to be flying in the clouds. Everyone's going to take a stop at Chabad of the airport. There's no question about it. That's the first stop on the way to Yerushalayim. To get where are you going to board the clouds? Who's going to help you board the clouds to Mashiach? There's no question in the world that you have to first stop at the Chabad of the airport. And by the Chabad of the airport, you'll have Rabbi Rapp Sr. and Rabbi Yossi Rapp and the entire family and all those which support the Moisid. And I encourage everyone to support Chabad. This is an unsolicited fundraising pitch, but everyone to support Chabad of the airport and the tremendous activities that it does, not just in New York, but many airports all over the world under the auspices of Chabad Air. And there should be not just Psuras Hageula, it should be Simcha in the family. I want to wish now Simchas for the entire Mishpacha, Ach Toiv V'Chesed, Kol Yemei Chayenu, all the days of our lives. We should be Zoiche to see Melech B'Yofyoi Sechzena Einenu, the Iskalos of the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach, and it should be taken from Yad Mamish, L'Chaim, L'Chaim.
Chaim l'chaim. First, on a personal level, thank you so much. Thank you for your beautiful brachas and all your inspiring words with regards to our family. As I mentioned, as I introduced you, a warm, caring friend of our family, and I really appreciate your words. And also for clarifying and telling us what the direction of where we're living now. What's the tekufa of Geula that we're living in now? Going from Yud Beis to Yud Gimmel with the Munah and Batachan. And yes, this is Bamish living the and signing that paper and reading that paper. Thank you so much for clarifying in such a brilliant way. Truly appreciate it. Being where they're living through this time, the Chodesh Hageula and the Mei Hageula, we should take a see the scholars of the Rebbe Melech Mashiach taken with Mamash now. And I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight and wish you a good Yom Tov. Thank you so much.